Good evening, my name is Alyssa Jackson, and in today's video, we're going to briefly talk about vision boards. But not just a vision board, but a vision board that connects to the next 3 to 5 years in my teaching career. So, just as starters, I am a middle school ELA teacher, and as of right now, I've been teaching ELA for almost 3.5 years, and I'm almost going into my fourth year in teaching as well. But then again, I always have to wonder, in the next 3 to 5 years, where do I see myself? Do I still see myself still teaching in secondary school? Would I want to go to high school or possibly college? So, in my personal opinion, and according to my vision board, I see myself going towards much older students, even though I love teaching middle school, especially around the age where children who are between the ages of 11 through 13 are going through that transitional stage before they become fully adolescents. I like to help them guide themselves into who they want to be when they grow up, and most importantly with reading and writing, because even though in elementary school that was part of their growing aspect, in middle school it's something they have to master, for it is the main foundation for high school, because without learning how to read and write and fully comprehend it, it is not going to be good for them as they get older. And so why should this be a growing mindset for them? Learning how to read and write, learning how to set goals. Well, if they don't learn how to set goals, they're not going to achieve anything that might be impossible for them to do. But see, as a woman of God, everything is all possible through Jesus Christ who strengthens us. Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. So Jesus always knows that our plans that we create will never go to plan. So students may try to plan something, but the question is, what kind of work are they going to put in it to where it can be a potential plan? See, that's where the growing mindset comes in. They have to grow the plan. They have to learn to see what can they do, who they want to be in 5 years, what they want to do after high school. Do they plan to go to college? Do they plan to travel? What exactly will our students do? Because if they don't have the basic academics settled, they're not going to be able to know what they want to do in life. So that's actually going to help them a lot. And according to the GCU statement on the integration of faith and work, one of the quotes that I liked the most was, "We believe that God's work speaks authoritatively about creation, fall, and redemption, as well as the restoration of all things through Christ Jesus." And so, it's letting us know that within the educational field, with the growing mindset and how we want our children to thrive, we want to make sure they understand the importance of why their life is so not taken for granted. How it's not something that should be wasteful, to where setting goals and understanding their purpose in life is going to help them as students, and not just as students, but also possible as followers of Christ. Because when they go into the real world, no one's going to take pity on them because they don't know how to read or write. They're not going to pity them if they have a disability. They're not going to pity them because they have deep personal issues, because they're going to have to learn that the world is a cruel place and no one is going to really care about who you are. Because when you are wanting validation, that's already a red flag. And that cannot be a crutch to where you need people to depend on you. That's what I like about middle school. That's why I like to teach middle school, and I still want to do high school and college, to where we teach students how to be independent and not having to rely on their teachers as a crutch to where they cannot do everything by themselves. Jesus is already inside of them. Jesus has never left, because even though I wear this cross, regardless of the cross, Jesus is still inside of me. He is the ultimate crutch, meaning he will never leave us. but sometimes there are going to be times you have to face stuff on your own. And that's how it is for students. They're going to have to learn how to do stuff on their own, and they cannot even think twice about hesitation or even procrastinate about something they're not completely sure of. So the next bullet point is to describe how you will not only take care of your professional growth, but also your personal growth and mental health. Include why this is important for becoming an advocate and a leader for students and other educators. Well, I know this for sure. Going to my next slide. So this is coming from SplashLearn, and this is the 5 examples of universal design for learning in classrooms. Because here's the thing. In the classroom, the way I want to set it is to where it is peaceful, inviting, and safe, but also hardworking. Because whenever I think about how I want to make my classroom a good environment to where the students are well, and also myself as the educator, I am well too, it creates a steady boundary to where everything is working out according to God's will, but also it is simple and it's clear. Now, I found this quote to be simple, but still general to how it relates to how I want to create my classroom environment. It says UDL is a framework that can help teachers create lessons material accessible to all students, regardless of their learning styles or abilities. Because regardless of their learning style abilities, meaning I have a classroom of students who are SPED, students who are ESOL, and students who are general, students who have 504s, McKinney-Vento, the list goes on. So I have a full house of a whole bunch of students. However, does it change the atmosphere of my classroom? No. Does it deteriorate my mental health? No. What I like about this quote is that, one, by creating designs that help accommodate students who have different needs, it makes me as a teacher try to do something different to where not everybody's learning the same thing. They're learning it differently based off their learning style, because really it goes further into like where you have those who are visual learners, auditory learners, or body kinesthetic, to where you have to show them through physical actions the examples and whatnot. So that's what I like about universal design for learning, and again, this is from SplashLearn, because it shows us that we need to have certain prior knowledge of accessing different skills and strategies. Whether I do small groups, whether I am I'm co-teaching with my teachers, whether it's for SPED or ESOL, we have to make sure we're on the same page, and we have to make sure that we are not leaving our students behind. We have backup plans just in case if a certain assignment is too hard for them, then we need to make sure that everything is all good and everything's going according to plan. And not only that, but it creates an organization and it creates a steady pace. Because the one thing we do not want to do, even as myself as a teacher, is to put so much work on the kids, but yet it's just all about making sure we get stuff done, but we don't follow the main thing. Has the student mastered the standard? And that's it. And so, as we get into our last bullet point, discuss how your growth plan incorporates Christian worldview perspectives and the college education core values. So we did talk deeply about Christian values, especially how it's going to combine with education. So I'm going to use Turnitin as my third source. And so when I was reading it, they talked about authentic learning. And so, according to my source, it says fostering self-directed learners with long-term deep understanding of concepts is a key goal for educators. Authentic learning is, per Stephen Revington, a real-life learning. It is a style of learning that encourages students to create tangible, useful, quality product outcome to be shared with their world. And last one. Connecting what instructors teach a real-world issue and problems is at the core of authentic learning. In other words, Authentic learning requires students to engage in meaningful activities and actively think about what is they are learning. So I'm going to stop there and reread what I just wrote. Reread what I just heard. In other words, authentic learning requires students to engage in meaningful activities and actively think about what it is they are learning. So that means if I were to connect this to a Christian worldview, it would be nice in my classroom if we were to do a simple Bible study to where I could introduce the book of Job, because the book of Job, it shows how Job went through trial and error in his life. He lost everything, his home, his children, everything, to where he almost thought about giving up, but yet he didn't. He went through the impossible through God, because God and Satan were trying to decide, will Job lose his faith if he lost everything from this world? But he didn't. And at the end, he got twice as much back. I would like to teach that to my students because it helps them realize, hey, what happened if you were to lose everything? How would it change your fate? How would you feel if you were to lose your house, your car, all the money you have in your bank account? If someone were to leave you, how would you feel if you were put in that position to where, how would you react? How would your faith work? What are some things that are going to happen to you if you lose that kind of stuff? Because they're going to have to learn in the real world, there are going to be consequences to things that you may not comprehend. That's why they have to learn that consequences and accountability. Why must they learn those two words? Because they have to learn to be accountable for their actions. And if they're not accountable for their actions, then that is when consequences come from their misbehavior. Or even when they're doing simplest things, or even to where they get into major trouble and they're going to have to wonder, well, who did it? Why did this happen? You got to ask for yourself, why did this happen? And really, that's what I like about the Bible. Well, not like, but love about the Bible. The Bible has so many stories that the children can relate to, but it tells us these important themes that help us guide in our life. And sometimes there might be some stuff that can actually relate to us, and not to us, but to the children as well. So if we're going to be educators who follow Christ, then we must do what is necessary. That's what I love about my vision board, because it shows that I want to collaborate with my students. I want to help them towards their goal. I want to keep parents involved to where they know that, hey, I care about your child. I show tough love, because if I don't show tough love, they're going to go into the world thinking that they're going to be admired and validated, and that is not how it's supposed to go. But it shows where I don't want to give up on my children. They may not be my biological children, but they are my students. And it's funny, educators spend more than 8 hours a day with them, more than they do with their parents, unless it is the summer. And it just shows how much time we spend with them to where we know them more deeply than ever. Last thing, in my vision board, it gives me deep thoughts about how I view myself as a teacher. I still view myself as a teacher who is still willing to learn, to grow, to organize, and to most importantly have faith to where I don't lose my faith in God. Even when people try to put me down to say, you shouldn't spread the gospel at work, you shouldn't force children to learn about Jesus. Well, first of all, no one is forcing anybody. It is an open discussion, because I'm not trying to condemn a child to hell. No. That is not what is going on. What happens is I open the floor about Christ. And sometimes the children are interested because, one, They have questions. This is the time to where they ask the most questions. I'm not condemning anyone, and I'm not telling anyone that they're going to rot down there. No, because I am not the judge, and I am not a hypocrite, for God is the ultimate judge. But He does want us to share the gospel, because He knows that if we do not do our work, it will all be for nothing, and blood will be on our hands. And so as I close out this video, this vision board gave me a new perspective about how I view myself as a teacher. That I want to go above and beyond, but I also want to make sure that I do everything for Christ and through Christ, and not for my own selfish reasons. Because as I decrease, God will increase in my life. But I thank you all for listening, and I pray you all have a great evening. Thank you so much.